Hello, I'm Doug Muzzio. This is City Talk. He's won the prestigious Walter Cronkite Award for political reporting and a shelf full of Emmys, one of which I was nominated for. He was New York City's best TV reporter, incisive, insouciant, and innovative. And now he wants you to get real. He's Jay DeDapper, a 22-year veteran TV reporter who has covered New York City for a dozen years and who currently is the web host of Get Real, a political and media blog. From 1998 until early 2009, he worked for WNBC as their political correspondent, covering candidates, campaigns, governors, senators, presidents, and issues. Jay came to New York in 1992 to WABC, where he was first a general assignment reporter and then the station's political reporter. That's where we met. Jay, welcome.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay. What's going on at WNBC? And what does it say about TV news in general?
Well, I like to tell the story that for people who don't read ratings, and most people don't, that in 1992 when I came to New York, the three stations, and there are only three doing news at 6 o'clock, right. Channel 2, Channel 4, Channel 7, their combined rating was something like a 45 or a 50.
Meaning?
Just take that as a number. 45 or 50, that's their combined rating, the number of people watching.
Okay.
That represents the number of people watching. That combined rating, adding in Channel 5, that does the 6 o'clock news now. In 2009, that combined rating is about a 10.
Wow.
So the audience has, to a large degree, vanished. And while that was masked for a long time by rising ad revenues in the early 2000s up through last year, ad companies were spending money right and left, even though the audience was shrinking. That fell off a cliff. And so what's happening at WNBC and is happening around the country is that companies that are in the business to make a profit are looking at their news division saying, this is where we're spending, this is where the bulk of a station's money is being spent, we can't afford to do it anymore. So at WNBC, they have eliminated lots and lots of jobs of experienced people, and where they have hired back in, they've hired people who will work for less money, and that generally means less experience.
But they dismantled the best TV newsroom in the metropolitan area and replaced it with what? What is this? They call it the content center? What is this?
Well, I think, they would argue and have argued that they didn't dismantle something and put something bad in its place, that they changed the model. And that the old model simply didn't work anymore, partly for economics and partly because people weren't watching. You could have had the best newsroom, but if nobody's watching, who cares? Their content center is a little bit, it's a little Orwellian. They rename stuff, and what does it really mean?
Doublespeak. At
the end of the day, they could have left it and called it a newsroom, and I think that's fine. I think people probably know what a newsroom is. But what they want to do is they want to produce news for a lot of different places. For the taxi cabs, you see it in the taxis.
Right.
For cell phones, for the PATH trains, they're going to be on the PATH trains soon, and for TV. And so if you have one place where all of these things can be produced simultaneously, you can produce more content in your content center with fewer people. And that costs less money. And at the end of the day, everybody's going to move towards that model. WNBC's kind of cutting edge there and starting down a path that a lot of other people are going to follow.
But there's obvious impacts to this. You've got to be able to sacrifice depth. You've also sacrificing historical memory, knowledge, context. There are costs to this that aren't financial. Go ahead.
I'm going to look like sour grapes here because I'm part of the cost. So, I don't want to vent.
Okay,
I don't want to vent. I think
analyze. That's what I want you for.
They say that when they've been questioned by the press, by the media, and by their own people, including me in meetings, well, isn't this going to sacrifice quality? The answer was, well, it depends on how you define quality. You know what follows from that, which is, yes, quality is going to suffer.
Right.
And it has. It has at many stations, and WNBC is no exception. There is less money to pay for experience and depth of coverage. The argument always circles back around to, but if people aren't watching, then what we were providing was not what people wanted. I don't think that necessarily follows, and I think at the end of the day what has happened is that the local TV stations in general, and I don't just point at Channel 4,
right,
but have gotten away from providing any kind of information that is different or contextual or useful. And because of that, they all look alike, and if they all look alike, you might as well just watch the one that has the prettiest faces or the people that you like the best, which to some degree is what local news has always been about. And so people have drifted to other stations, to one other station in particular, Channel 7, which is now very strong, and the other stations in general are much weaker.
Okay, look down five years down the road, New York City TV. Who's left standing in any form that is remotely similar to what we grew up with?
It's not going to be in the form that we grew up with, whatever's left.
Right.
5 years, I may be a little dramatic here, but I think that, on cable, New York One doesn't depend on ad revenue. It's paid for by Time Warner, and Time Warner gets subscriber fees.
Right.
So New York One and News 12, the Cablevision channels, are going to survive, and they're going to thrive, I think. Broadcast, I think Channel 7's left. Maybe Channel 5's left. I think Channel 4, Channel 2, Channel 11, I think that to a large degree they leave the local news business or pare it down to the point where they got a half-an-hour show at night. Maybe they do some programming in the morning. And that's about it. So very small newsroom, very small operation. Most of it is headlines. They cover some of the stories they have to cover, but they do it in a very cursory way because that's all they're going to be able to afford to do because the people who run these corporations have bottom lines to meet. That's fine. Right. That's all they're going to be able to afford to do, and they can continually argue, look, most people are going to the web for their information anyway. We're providing them with what they want, with what they're willing to come and watch.
Okay. You're talking about a much more circumscribed physically, the newsroom in terms of people, the coverage, etc. You've worked in New York in two major newsrooms.
The two biggest, yeah.
The two biggest, WABC and WNBC. What's the difference in a newsroom? How much does a newsroom matter in terms of the ambiance, the interaction? Is there a difference?
Well, I think where the difference is what ends up on the air. I mean, what happens inside the newsroom might be interesting to somebody who works there. For the outsider, though, what happens inside the newsroom, what the culture of a newsroom is what is reflected on TV. At WABC for years, the culture has really not changed, and it's a very hard-driving culture. When I worked there, I was told the very first day, this is the toughest newsroom, this is by my boss, this is the toughest newsroom you'll ever work in. If you survive 3 months, you'll be fine. But they're going to chew you up and try and spit you out. Good luck. And that was the advice he gave me. It's like, oh, thanks. At WNBC, there was a much more, there has always been a much more kind of conversational. Let's talk about it. Let's work through, let's work through our problems. Let's figure out as a committee how we're going to cover this. One of them is reflected, the WABC model, which is top-down kind of driven, and you're going to do this, let's do it, let's go get them, is reflected in the way they cover news. It's fast, it's hard-hitting.
It's breaking.
They go and they cover everything.
Right.
But they don't cover very deep. Even when I was there, I would say that, they don't go very deep. They're not willing to say, yes, you need 3 minutes for this story. Until last year at WNBC, that was the big difference. At WNBC, I always thought of it as maybe a little bit more the PBS of local news, in that if we had something that was worth 3 minutes, you discuss it, you talk about it, you figured out a way to do it, and you put it on, and it would be 3 minutes long. That has changed. That day is over at WNBC. But that culture in the newsroom, which has been broken now and is gone because all the people have been replaced, but that culture survived for a very long time and produced great product. Again, though, they'd argue, great product, nobody was watching at the end.
And the bottom line is
the bottom line is the bottom line. These are not nonprofit enterprises.
Unfortunately, in their eyes, they're becoming more and more nonprofit. That's why they're changing.
Unintentionally
That's exactly right. One of the things, we talked about you sort of ranting and, but you didn't.
Me ranting? What about you?
Well, forget it. About WNBC.
Yeah.
When you held and former and current NBC folks got together for the Severance for New York party, Legends 33.
I didn't call it that.
No, you didn't call it that. The headline of The Observer called it that.
Yeah.
You were the impromptu MC, and you were very, sort of not only resigned, but sort of wrapping your hands around what had happened. And you quote, Channel 4 news is over. What we had. It's time to move on. And you have moved on. Let's talk about moving on. Yeah. Let's talk about Get Real. What is Get Real?
One of the things that I always felt that I wanted to do and did in some limited ways while I was at both Channel 7 and especially at Channel 4, where I was given a lot of latitude to explore stories in different ways.
And then present new approaches, like what matters.
Right.
Exactly.
And this is kind of an extension of what matters all these years later is, what are the facts? Because so often TV and even the newspapers are filled with, well, he's saying this and she, and before long the entire story is about the battle of words. But words have meaning and words are based in facts. And if you get away from the facts, then the words are meaningless. So let's return to what can you demonstrably say is true. And when somebody says, X, Y, and Z, and you go, well, but X, Y, and Z are demonstrably false, call them out on it. And that's what I try and do on Get Real.
Yeah, the quotes from the webpage at jaydedapper.com are facts matter, question everything. And then there's a very interesting quote. It says, you avoid the easy trap of appearing to be objective. Now, most of us are taught that journalists are supposed to be objective, and you describe it as a trap.
Objectivity is, and there's a lot of, there's been a lot of people who have written this from outside of journalism. True objectivity is impossible.
Right.
We all come with built-in biases that we don't even recognize. And there's been a lot of research into what journalist biases are, and they don't tend to be political. They tend to be small town, pastoral, kind of Jeffersonian things. Most journalists come with these kinds of biases towards the small instead of the big, things like that.
Okay.
These biases are built in, we don't even recognize them, and we would say, no, I'm being objective. I'm being objective because I let this person have their say and the opposite have their say. But that's not objectivity. Objectivity isn't, oh, there's only two sides, we let them both speak and we throw it up in the air.
And they have equal weight.
Right. Objectivity is speaking about the objective truth, the objective facts, and allowing,
if there are such
things, and addressing those. Treating your audience as if it actually has a brain. People in the audience have a brain and say, look,
mistake.
This person says this and this person says that, but this person is wrong. You don't hear that in mainstream journalism. People are afraid to do that. They'll say, this person appears to be wrong. For instance, in this MTA story up in Albany, the state Senate releases a plan to bail out the MTA. And in the Times the next day, or 2 days later, Will Newman, the transit reporter, writes a great article, basically says, the facts are wrong. It's wrong. Right. The headline is, appears to be faulty.
What a weenie headline, I know.
Appears. It doesn't appear to be faulty. It is faulty. Okay. And that's that kind of creeping, appears to be, allegedly, all those things, very useful much of the time, but sometimes it's a crutch, and that's the crutch about objectivity.
Okay, now your Get Real website has various features, and I love it. Are you serious? I mean, big question. Skeptical Eye, Proof Positive, Media Watch, and
Mea culpa.
Mea culpa.
I just think that it's so rare that a public figure admits that they're wrong.
Particularly reporters.
Especially reporters. But it just doesn't happen. It's very, very rare. And so I wanted to kind of reward people who, in fact, say they're wrong.
Well, it appears to me it's very Catholic, so I understand this.
The first one that I did was Ben Bernanke back in the fall when he said, it was in an article with the New Yorker, and it was buried in this article, but he said, and it was a very weird mea culpa, like he blamed everybody else, but he accepted some of the blame, but he basically said, we screwed up. We didn't appreciate how bad the housing bubble was. And that was the first mea culpa. We did a mea culpa for Obama when he said he screwed up, and that was a very important moment, I think, in his early presidency.
Sure.
So, yeah, I love mea culpa.
Okay, now, clearly, in a sense, this is transitional. This is to keep you sharp. Mm-hmm. Where do you go? What do you do? What is, I
don't know, and I wish I could tell you right now. I think that television news is changing so rapidly that it's almost quicksand under, any of us who have been in the business, under our feet. And to say that I'm going to end up here is I think, not something that I can say. I'm looking at a lot of different possibilities. A website isn't going to support me, but the premise of this website could turn into something else, a show that might be, a network might buy, or that I might be able to do, a book, or any number of things. If I follow that passion towards digging out the facts and letting the facts speak for themselves, and calling out the people who are, blah, 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 I think there's a future there.
Don't you miss, though, sometimes perversely, the on-the-ground grind, the grind?
Sure.
I mean, you followed Hillary. You ate, as much junk food as she did, and you've traveled throughout the state.
I didn't wear any pantsuits, though.
Oh, okay, and you was wearing fireproof. But you're basically, in a sense, sitting at your computer in many ways. I mean, don't you miss that?
I do. Yeah, I mean, being out and about and covering things. What you really miss is, and it's not the traveling on the bus and the camaraderie and all that. I don't really miss that. I had a lot of that for a lot of years, and it gets very insular. What you do miss is being in different places with real people.
Right.
And it's not that you interview those people, it's what those people walk up to you and say, or what you overhear in a diner. And I do miss that.
You can't get that at your desk.
I can't get that at my desk. And people can't get that at the web. Sitting at their desk on the computer. Other people can't either. And that's the real big picture danger in journalism, is that as the big papers die out and TV cuts back and everything, that bloggers, it's a closed loop. Everybody's talking to themselves, but nobody's out actually listening to real people and what real people are saying. And I'm as guilty of that as anybody.
No, I understand that. I mean, I as a professor and sort of doing the media stuff that I do, you got to get out to Queens. You got to get out to the Bronx.
Absolutely.
Okay, you start off in Davenport, Iowa.
Yeah, that was my first show.
And just talk about your early experiences. I know you've regaled me with tales.
Yeah, that was out of grad school. That was the first job I could get. That's where they hired me, and it was a good station. It was the number one station. It was a big station in Davenport, Iowa, smallish market. But what was great about that was I started in late 1987, but 1988, Iowa. 7 dwarfs: Dukakis, Gephardt, Jackson, Simon. There were Gore. I'm missing 2 of them. Bruce Babbitt and
the guy from Colorado. Did he do it again?
Udall?
No.
Oh yeah.
Hart.
Gary Hart was it? There's the 7 dwarfs. That's good. Between the 2 of us, we got a break.
Right, and you got 5.
So the 7 dwarfs started traveling around the state. They were in. There was a caucus. I had always been interested in politics in a kind of hands-off way. I read the paper, I voted and all that. But all of a sudden, to have these major candidates coming in and sitting in the studio and talking to you every week, Mike Dukakis and I were on a first-name basis. He'd walk in and go, "Hey, Jay, how are you?" "Good, Mike, how are you?" I was 25.
Right, this is great.
It was great. And that year, I was sent to cover a caucus. So I went up to Maquoketa, which is a little farm town north of Davenport, and I sat in a school gymnasium and I watched a caucus. And that informed all of my coverage in Iowa through all of the other stories, all of the years that I went for all the different places I worked. It always informed my coverage that a lot of the people who were there, a lot of the national reporters, had maybe dropped in and visited. I participated in one. I lived in one. I was there. And I got it. I think I got it in a different way than most people.
I was working at the polling unit at WABC during the 1988 election, and obviously I was in Manhattan. But we did a survey of all the county chairs in Iowa, and there was one county chair. I spoke to his wife, and she said I had to call at 4:30 in the morning because by 5 o'clock he was out with the pigs.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it was real. And that was
real. They're real people.
But you got as a reporter, your worst story, you're the one that, in a sense, you blew, or the one which was the most touching to you, sort of in a negative sense?
Well, there are a lot of stories that I wish I could have done better. There are a lot of them that I didn't, for time reasons, for lack of skill reasons, for whatever, that weren't as good as they could have been.
Is there anyone that's sort of a paradigm?
Well, the worst one was more of a technical thing, and it was just inexperience. And there was a mass murder.
Excuse me, you covered 2 mass murders.
In my first 2 markets.
One in Davenport and one in Phoenix. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I did hopefully it doesn't say anything about me. The one in Iowa, we flew, we got on a private plane, flew through an ice storm to get to it because it happened at night. We got there just too late to do a live shot for the nighttime show. This was near Storm Lake, Iowa. There were 2 hotels, and everybody had rushed in.
And what was the crime?
It was a family, a whole extended family, all killed by one person who then committed suicide. We didn't know that at the time. So I get up the next day. We barely get any sleep, and I'm supposed to do just a straight live shot for a minute and a half, talk about what had happened. So I'm very nervous. I'm only 3 months into the job. I've never done a satellite live shot, which is a little different than a microwave one, because there's a delay. There's a 2-second delay as it goes up to the satellite and pops back down. There's a thing called mix-minus that keeps the thing in your ear, your voice in your ear, in sync with you.
Right.
They didn't have it on. So I start talking, and 2 seconds later, I hear what I'm saying. So I start saying, well, behind me at this, for a minute and a half. Live, I did that. It was a disaster.
You wanted to cry.
So bad that the people at the station were so generous, they mistakenly forgot to tape the show, so there's no record of that. That was horrible. I felt sick to my stomach because it was so bad.
Okay. The story that once you did, you were absolutely exhilarated. Either the substance of the story, or how you did it, or both. I mean, where you are, this is TV reporter heaven.
Well, I mean, this sounds kind of wonky, but the What Matters thing that we did starting in 2000 gets
at
back
WNBC.
to at WNBC. That's what we won the Cronkite Award for. These were 15-minute segments taking a single issue in the presidential race, a defining presidential race between Gore and Bush, where a lot was changing. We really felt like the issues got a very short shrift. They got kind of a minute. Oh, here's what they say about this, that, and the other thing. We wanted to drill down and say what are their programs and will they actually work? And we did that by first setting up these pieces, by talking to real people about the issue, by profiling a nurse or somebody who didn't have insurance on health care and giving a full range, full voice to them, and then going to what the candidates were saying about that. I mean, it's kind of wonky, but I was really proud of those because I think over the course of 9 weeks, spending 15 minutes each of those nights, that we accomplished a lot and informed a lot, gave a lot of information in a way that I think a lot of people could have used. There are other stories that were more exciting. I mean, the hanging chads as a political reporter, sitting in Florida every day and watching that. This was very exciting. The OJ trial, which I covered for 9 months, was both incredibly boring and incredibly exciting. So, I mean, there have been things like that. Lots of stories that I can think of that have been very exciting. But What Matters is the one that I probably am most proud of because I think we did the most good with it.
Chapters in a book, stories.
Huh?
Stories that would be in your book that you're writing.
I'm not writing a book.
I thought you were writing a book.
No, I'm thinking about turning Get Real into kind of a treatise about how we as Americans treat politics as entertainment now, and I think that's a problem. I think that when the Maddow show and when the O'Reilly show and when the Olbermann show, when the Dobbs show, when people get their news from those things, and I'm not taking anything away from those people or their shows, but those shows are entertainment. They're not news shows.
What about Jon Stewart?
Jon Stewart's an entertainment show,
right.
And I watch that. I think it's funny. But I get other sources. I read other sources because I do that for entertainment. But to a large degree, politics has become another form of entertainment, and I think that's very dangerous.
And certainly the reporting of it has become, entertainment with stars.
It's all about the stars. It's all about who's the biggest star, not what they're saying.
And the best team on television as well.
Right,
okay,
right.
Well, we're gonna do a little, reversal here. I'm going to do a lightning round.
Ooh.
As we do in debates.
In the debates, yeah.
I do a name or an event, and you give me a quick answer. Your first response.
Okay.
And to a certain extent, this is a cheat because I've drawn some of it from, the website.
Okay, I'll try not to get
Limbaugh.
The Obama's best friend. I think he is, being the face of the Republican Party, is the worst thing that could happen to Republicans and the best thing that could happen to Democrats.
Kirsten Gillibrand.
Going to continue to be a senator from New York and could be the first female president.
Ooh, why? How?
She has the Sarah Palin factor for Democrats. She is moderate in a way that can appeal across the country. She is tenacious.
Oh.
She wants it.
Yep.
She can raise
She's
money.
Chuck Schumer.
She's Chuck Schumer in heels and with a prettier face and a better voice, or a more appealing voice to the rest of the country.
Ooh. Okay, David Patterson.
Not ready for prime time.
Ooh, 2010.
Right now, he's in trouble. This is what happens. The only way David Patterson is in real trouble is when African-American leaders, and there only has to be one, prominent African-American says, Dave, you got to step aside because we're going to lose the governorship if you stay in, and they throw their support to Andrew Cuomo. I don't think it'll happen publicly.
I
don't know who says it.
Who's going to say it?
Yeah.
Do you have any idea?
Once that happens, I don't know. I mean, is it his own dad? Is it the old guard that says, look, David, you've been, we appreciate it, but we're going to lose the governor's race if you stay in this.
So if you were betting he doesn't run? Right now, I mean, obviously, if he pulls a rabbit out of the,
you never know what's good. You never. Right. If the decision had to be made today, I bet that he would be encouraged and decide not to run and maybe be appointed ambassador to something by Obama as a way out.
Malcolm Smith.
Oh boy. I could get in a lot of trouble with this one. Here's a guy.
I'll get in trouble.
Here's a guy who clearly, in 2 months, has demonstrated that he has no leadership capability.
Okay, so wait a minute. So we've got two of the three men in a room are not men in a room. It's like a man in a room and two boys. Let's talk about Shelley. Talk about Shelley Silver.
Shelley Silver's running the state.
So he's the de facto governor?
Look, Shelley has always been the most powerful guy in Albany. The reason is because he was the only Democrat before. So being the only one actually means he holds a lot more cards.
Sure.
Now then when Spitzer came in, it was, well, maybe Spitzer's the most powerful one. Well, Spitzer got in a little trouble, and Shelley managed to survive and to rise even higher on that. Now it's all three Democrats, which should dilute Shelley's strength. Shelley's the only pro there. He's the only guy who knows how to get anything done. He's the only one who can hold his caucus together. He's the only one who can deliver. I'm not saying this is good or bad, or he's a good guy or a bad guy.
No. These are the facts, the demonstrable facts.
He's the king of the hill.
Jay DeDapper.
He's the king of the hill.
Mike Bloomberg.
Going to be the next mayor, but a little too full of himself.
That's it? I went a little more? No more? That's it? Okay.
Look,
one more.
I think that this term limits thing has caused a lot of people to rethink what they thought about Mike Bloomberg, but not rethink it enough that they don't want him to be mayor again.
Okay. Finally, Barack Obama.
Great opportunity, great risk, and this story has a lot more chapters to be written.
What about the chapters that have been written?
Well, I mean, you mean the chapters leading up to this? I mean, look, he's an historic figure, and all of that's important. But when history's written, being the first, all of the history that's been written up to this point, everything that's happened up to this point is not going to be what the history is going to be. At the end of the day, somewhere down the line, he's going to be judged for what he's able to do in these 4 or 8 years. Specifically, what I think he's able to do in the next year. And all these firsts and all this history will become somewhat meaningless and could actually backfire to some degree if he succeeds wildly or if he fails. And if this economy, if what he plans and what his proposals and his people's proposals for the economy don't work, that's where or do work. That's where the history will be written. The firsts, the things that make him historic, those will be part of the story, but they aren't the story.
We'll continue this discussion at some point in the future about what the story becomes.
Yeah.
Jay, it's been a pleasure.
This is great.
Thank you.
I love coming on.
Big fun.
Yeah.
Hello, I'm Doug Muzzio. Let us know what you think about this show. You can reach us at CUNY.TV. When you get there, click on the bar that says Contact Us and send your email. Whatever it is. Thanks, no thanks, obnoxious, do it. Send it.